foreign portfolio investors may finally have something to cheer about. The AP Shah panel today submitted its much-awaited report on minimum alternate tax on foreign portfolio investors to Finance Minister Arun Jaitley. Although the content of the report has not been made public yet, sources tell your channel that the panel has suggested the government take a lenient approach to foreign investors. Remember, the centre is locked in a legal tussle with foreign investors on the applicability of MAT on a retrospective basis.
ET now learns that Finance Ministry has decided to tone down its stance in the test case against Mauritius-based Castleton Investments in the Supreme Court against the backdrop of the Shah panel report. There are at least half a dozen cases involving MAT on FPIs, with the overall tax demand topping about 680 crore rupees. The government is likely to take a final call on this crucial issue within a fortnight's time. The AP Shah panel report, its impact on fund flows into the Indian market and what it essentially means for investor sentiment is a top story right here on Business Tonight.
The government will take a decision in the matter very quickly. As I told earlier to the media, there will be no delay on the part of the government. A very quick decision will be taken. You will ask, how quick? Now I cannot say that. It will be a very quick decision. Report has been submitted today. We are going through the report and we will decide very fast.
Also, we are given to understand that the government is likely to temper its stance per se with respect to the Castleton case, the position that they've currently held as far as the applicability of MAT for FIIs is concerned. Sir, your views on that?
You see, without going through the report fully, without going through the report properly, it's not correct on my part to say what view the government will take in the Supreme Court case. And also let me use this opportunity, to tell you and also to your viewers that without going through the report, let's not start speculating what is there inside the report and what view the government is going to take in the Supreme Court. And with regard to the issue, because it is again and again being raised that the report has not been made public, I would like to say what matters is the final decision of the government, and the report will be made public at the appropriate time.
What are the other legacy issues that the AP Shah panel will look at, sir? If you could just throw some more light on it.
No, this is again as announced by the Finance Minister in the Parliament. These issues are under consideration and we will be issuing the relevant government orders in this regard in the near future.
So my last question, should the FIIs look for any sort of retrospective relief on MAT, sir?
As I told you, we have to go through the report and then decide, and then it will depend on the content of the report whether it's a decision to be taken in the ministry level or we need to go to a higher level to the cabinet. That all depends on what is there in the report. So therefore we will have to examine and then decide.
We've got two of the top tax experts in the country joining us live in the studio. Ketan Dalal, Pranav Sayta, thank you so much for joining us. Both of them need no introduction. Firstly, your reactions to the exclusive news that we've put up. Along expected lines, the AP Shah committee ruling that MAT is not applicable on foreign portfolio investors?
See, I think 2 points I want to make here, Sandeep. First of all, I think the whole issue of MAT is much broader than FIIs. It's applicable to foreign companies. Sorry, it's not applicable to my mind to foreign companies. And we do not know, of course, what is the content of the report, but one does wish that the panel has said something about foreign companies in general. Because what about private equity, for example? What about companies deriving interest and royalties, for example? And of course, many of them would be covered by a treaty and it in any case should not apply. But I think regardless of treaty or otherwise, I think that is one aspect. Secondly, I think there has been this talk about whether, they can do it retrospective, etc. Just let's step back. I think the intent of the legislature, as really clearly indicated by what we call the explanatory notes when MAT was introduced, as indeed when there were some amendments, absolutely clearly brings out that MAT was supposed to apply only to domestic companies. For example, they put examples in the explanatory notes which said this will be the effective rate of tax.
Sure.
When you talk about an effective rate of tax, they had multiplied the MAT implication with a domestic rate of tax. In 2 out of the 3 circulars, they actually used the word domestic companies. It was quite clear. So I think this is really not retrospective in that sense. I think perhaps this controversy should never have arisen. And all that required, to my mind, at least, if not an amendment, is just a clarificatory circular from the government. Anyway, be that as it may, now that the report is out and we hear from you that sources say that it is a favorable report, if that is indeed so, I think the government can issue actually a circular to that effect and maybe follow it with a clarificatory amendment later just to close the loop, so to speak. But clearly a welcome situation for a controversy which to my mind should never have arisen in the first place.
Mr. Sayta, my question is really coming your way. I know it's a welcome situation and, you know, you obviously, I'm sure the FIRs are going to be thrilled with this. The question really is, how much of a bind is the government really in on this matter? You have a Castleton case that's already going on in the Supreme Court. You have a legality issue here because notices have been issued already. You know, given the office memorandum that was issued by Mr. Chidambaram as Finance Minister, isn't the government in some sort of a bind? It may want to get out of the loop, but is it going to be easy to do so?
Well, I would feel that the whole urgency that the government has shown on this, the way it has progressed so far, it has set up an expert committee which has gone into great detail. Very logically, I believe they would have come to their conclusions. I'm sure it's a very well-reasoned, well-researched report after taking every aspect, argument into account of both sides. If the report finally comes to a very reasoned, logical conclusion that because of very valid, solid reasons, MAT cannot be applied on FIIs which do not have a place of business in India, then that's already a very strong endorsement of what the interpretation, the correct interpretation of law should always have been from the word go. So there's no retrospective amendment or relief that is coming in here. Let me first clarify that. Second, what the government is now doing is only bringing in more certainty, stability, rather than having prolonged, long litigation, which one creates harassment for various taxpayers, second creates an environment of uncertainty, lack of stability. Third, what has been the practice of even the revenue department for so many years has been disturbed by these recent notices. Never have FIIs been asked to pay MAT for so many years, more than a decade. Now suddenly to try and levy MAT on them, altogether new treatment or administrative practice that the government probably was to start. To put a stop to that will bring about a lot of stability, certainty, clarity to the law. I would feel there's absolutely nothing wrong. It's just clarifying its position on the law, and this is the correct legal interpretation as would be endorsed by the Justice AP Shah committee report. So I think it is a great step if they just clarify this. It also will mean that when it comes before the Supreme Court, they will not press as hard, just trying to argue something that is not arguable in the first place. So I would feel they should come completely transparent on this, clearly give their verdict rather than dilly-dallying, and I would feel that would send a great signal to foreign investors into India.
Fair point indeed. Come absolutely squeaky clean on this. Let there be no interpretation. Let there be no grey areas there. That's a valid point that you're making. But Mr. Dalal, if I may point this out to you, and just for the benefit of our viewers here, we must point out with a lot of pride here that we are the only ones who are telling you exclusive details from that report. I want to bring this back to you. Now we are given to understand by, again, decision makers within Finance Ministry that this report is going to be tabled in Parliament. Does this complicate matters? Because a clarificatory note would have meant the decision could have just been taken at the Finance Ministry level. Are you here seeing amendments being made to the Finance Act via Parliament? I mean, why should this report go to Parliament in the first place?
I'm not aware of that, Supriya. As I said, to my mind, it could perhaps... See, I think one issue which may have been weighing with the government is given the fact that in terms of the future, there has been an amendment to the law. They may not want to not do an amendment to the law also for the past, because otherwise it may be considered to be inconsistent, i.e. amendment for the future but no amendment for the past. So perhaps that is weighing with the government. But in the interregnum, because it may take some time to legislate that for the past, I think a circular may be enough. And, you know, just to supplement what Pranav said, in terms of the litigation that is going on, I really wonder whether they really need to litigate, because the government, it's the government's appointed committee. The government could actually say, look, we have seen the report. We believe that we are in agreement with the report and we do not want to agitate this matter further, is perhaps one way in which this could be dealt with, and that could send a non-adversarial signal also, which is, I think, something which we badly need at this point in time, given the kind of adversarial feel that foreign investors particularly feel about the tax department.
Right. Pranav, now that we know broadly, or at least we've reported what the reported, what the AP Shah panel report contains, and I have reasons to believe we've got it right. But fundamentally, what are the next likely course of action? Let's draw out various scenarios. One, that the government just waits for the Supreme Court to act, does nothing on it, and probably files a note saying that this is what AP Shah panel has recommended without giving its own view. Or do you think the government is likely to, now that there's a compelling case for it to present its own view, what do you think will be the next course of action from the government? What are the various scenarios possible?
Well, I can't say for sure, but I would feel it would be extremely reasonable for the government to take a view immediately, right now, maybe in the next few days, not wait for the Supreme Court judgment or even the hearing. Because I think before the Supreme Court, the government will have to take a stand before it enters the Supreme Court in the first place, as to whether it is going to argue vehemently in favor of the AR ruling in Castleton that foreign companies which do not have a presence in India are also liable to MAT. Are they going to take that argument? Are they going to vehemently put forth that view before the Supreme Court? Or are they going to instruct their counsel to say, no, we are accepting the proposition of the taxpayer that a foreign company which does not have physical presence or place of business in India is not subject to MAT. So it will have to take a view much before it enters the courtroom. That's one. Second, I also do not see what is the logic of not taking a view much before the Supreme Court decides on this matter, for two reasons. One, let's assume for a moment that the Supreme Court was to finally rule that MAT does not apply to FIIs. After it has ruled that MAT does not apply to foreign companies which do not have a place of business in India, what would the view of the government count for? It has already said it's not going to make a retrospective amendment after having made one in Vodafone's case, right? So if the Supreme Court has already decided that MAT does not apply to FIIs, what is left for the government to do then? Let's take the other view. The Supreme Court takes a view that MAT does apply to FIIs, FPIs, or that it does apply to foreign companies which do not have a physical presence in India. Very unlikely, but assuming that's the view that the Supreme Court takes, how much more difficult will it become for the government then
get out of this mess,
to give retrospective relief? I can't foresee how it simplifies or eases the government position. In fact, it will make it far, far, far more difficult then for the government to take this position.
So, Ketan, is it imperative that the government comes out with a clarificatory notice before the next hearing, or do you think it's probably likely that to just wait it out and present its position only in court when the next matter is when the matter is
I think, as Pranav rightly pointed out, I do not think there is any reason to do that. I think if the government possibly can accept, and as I said, it's the government's own panel, and if it can accept the AP Shah committee report if it's favorable and simply withdraw going to the Supreme Court, that I think should solve the matter, because there is no point even in agitating something which you're agreeing with in the first place. So I think rather than let it get into a judicial tangle with a variety of permutations and combinations that what could happen if the Supreme Court rules fully in favor, whether it makes observations on all foreign companies. By the way, Castleton was not an FII. That's another dimension that we need to bear in mind. So that's another kind of issue, because the general perception has been that based on Castleton, FIIs have been subjected to MAT, but Castleton was not an FII in the first place. So, I mean, there are issues around that. So, I think net, I would think that a circular clarifying the position and not agitating before the Supreme Court is perhaps the best course of action. And I think I would just disagree a little bit on the retrospective part. There is no retrospectivity at all. It's a clarificatory amendment of a law which is already there. See, retrospective means X is the law, you want to make it Y. You are simply saying that X is the law, I am acknowledging that X is the law. So I don't think there is any retrospectivity in that.
Ketan, just to clarify and repeat what I said. What I said was a situation where the Supreme Court does decide against the taxpayer.
Okay, I understand.
Then there is no other option but for the government to make a retrospective amendment granting relief, which is going to be far more difficult.
Fine. Sure.
Then rather than do that or reach that situation, they might as well issue a circular today. Right? Otherwise, it means they are just pushing it for the Supreme Court to take a call, and the government does not want to take a call. If that's what they wanted to do, why appoint the AP Shah committee? Why get the report in such a great hurry? Why then say that we are studying the report and so on? Then just leave it for the Supreme Court to decide. So I don't think that's what the government is trying to do. I think the government is trying to take a decision of what its viewpoint on this is, and it will have to do that because it has to instruct its counsel when it comes to the case before the Supreme Court as to what stand they are taking before the Supreme Court.
I think Supriya's got a question in Delhi as well. Supriya?
No, so I was actually coming to the point that Mr. Sayta was making, and Mr. Dalal, if I may point this to you, I mean, talking about the government's position in the court, what do you make of the statement that's coming in from Finance Ministry, tempering of its position in the Castleton case, which essentially means softening of stance, and are we reading that right? Because, I mean, they have to decide a position one way or the other on this matter going forward.
Sorry, I couldn't get the whole gist of the question. The voice is faint. Sorry, what was the question actually?
The bit that the Finance Ministry sources are telling us that they will temper their stance in the Castleton case in the Supreme Court. This is softening of stance. Are we reading that right?
Yeah, so I don't know whether tempering that stance, as I said, you know, you are either arguing the matter or you are not arguing the matter. And I think the halfway kind of house, Supriya, may not be a good idea. I think, as I said, they should come out with a clarification to say that we have accepted the report, we do not want to agitate it. And the point I was trying to make when Pranav finished his last point was, I think they should broad base it and not stick to just FII. The reason I'm mentioning this, and this is an important point, is because if they just talk about FIIs, I'm worried that it will cause another bout of issues as to, as I said, what about, you know, other foreign companies, what about private equity, etc. So I think it's important, even assuming that the AP Shah committee has only dealt with FIIs. I don't know what they have. I don't know whether they have broad-based their own report. But even if they have not, I think they should broad-base their stand to beyond FIIs is what I think it should be done.
Mr. Sayta, we are given to understand that this is actually a narrow-based report. This is not really looking at beyond FIIs. This is perhaps not even looking at the private equity firms. So, I mean, we still do not have that information. When and if we have it, that's a debate for another day. But Mr. Sayta, very quickly, the question really is that with a report like this, and now that the details that we are bringing to you, and of course the government's change of heart here on this entire matter, of course, it is still in a bind as far as legalities are concerned. Is this going to now restore confidence as far as foreign investors go?
Well, certainly, if the government does endorse the findings of the report and takes the stand that they will issue the circular, and when it comes to instructing their counsel in the case before the Supreme Court, they will take the stand that MAT does not apply to foreign companies which do not have a place of business in India, I think that would be an absolutely great signal to send. It's just that the position is the right position in any case to take. So doing the right thing is also something that restores confidence, because in the past, for example, recently the government decided not to appeal against the issue of shares debate, not to carry on with that litigation. That was a great move, although it was the right thing to do. Again, if they do the right thing, they say this is what we will clarify, this is the correct thing to do. It sends a great signal to investors, one, that they are not interested in perpetuating litigation, not interested in harassing taxpayers. This is a friendly government which is willing to do the right thing and has the boldness and the courage to do what the right thing is, even if it means, you know, taking some amount of political explaining to do in the process.
You know, just a very quick question, at least from my side, and this is going to be the last one from me. But Mr. Dalal, you know, it has been said that other complex legal matters and outstanding legal issues of this nature are also going to be referred to the AP Shah panel. Given, of course, if there's a favorable order or a favorable report that's coming in on the FIIs on this front, do you expect a sooner than later resolution of the retrospective tax as well now?
Well, I don't think when you say the retrospective tax, you mean the indirect tax, the Vodafone matter. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yeah,
I don't think, first of all, I don't think the panel's mandate was anything beyond the MAT. In fact, as I said, the panel may have taken the stand that it's only for FPI. But yes, I think that is a long-standing matter. And I think the earlier that matter is dealt with, the better. I think it's very clearly something which the Supreme Court had held, and I do not think there was any point in doing a retrospective amendment. I think the amount of damage that it has caused from a foreign investor standpoint, and the signal that litigation can go on and not get closure, sent really a very negative signal. So yes, if they can close that, obviously nothing like it.
Just quickly closing comments, and I want to bring the focus back to the issue at hand, which is MAT on FPIs. The thing that worries me is that on one hand, you know, we've broken the story on how AP Shah panel report has ruled against applicability of MAT on FPIs, and yet we have the same source from where we've got the story, indicate that the Finance Ministry is weighing the legalities of notices that are already being issued. When you see information like that, one tends to worry what's likely to be the government's next course of action. Do you think that now they're still caught in a bind? It's not a clear, open and shut case. The report is, unless the report itself is slightly ambiguous, unless the report itself is, but I'm guessing it can't be the case because, they've said on record that there is a unanimous view. So that it's unlikely to be a wishy-washy, ambiguous report. So does that concern you, both of you as well?
So I would feel, what's happening here is that the whole report, apart from giving the viewpoint on applicability of MAT on FPIs, FIIs, and that's the matter that was before the Justice AP Shah committee. So I don't think they would go beyond FIIs, FPIs. But the report would, I think, also suggest or recommend how this matter should be resolved by the Government of India. So they would also have recommended, should it be a circular to be issued by the government, should it be an amendment to the law that they should make, and so on and so forth. I think the government needs time to study that as to how does one resolve this matter in a manner that would be applicable across the board and that would leave little room for debate or discussion. Right. And that, I think, is what the government is likely to be going into studying. I would feel that probably an issue of a circular, which is categorical and clear, should resolve the matter once and for all. It does not necessarily need an amendment to the law, but one has to wait and see what the Justice AP Shah committee is recommending. If it's just issue of a circular, which I think should resolve the matter, I think it will be pretty quick, because even for pending assessments, if the government does issue a circular to the effect that foreign companies not having a place of business in India should not be liable to MAT, I think it will be completely binding on all the officers below the Central Board of Direct Taxes. So they would be bound to follow that circular, even if it were to be interpreted as giving a relief.
Ketan, let you have the last word. To be fair to the government, the Revenue Secretary on record in the interview to ET Now's Ruchi Bhatia has said that we will act quickly in it. Almost seem to indicate that they're going to be decisive. Is that a big glimmer of hope as well, that they're going to be decisive one way or the other?
Yeah, I think, see, in any case, the Castleton hearing is coming up, I think, on the 4th of August. Today, we are already on the 24th of July. So you anyway have less than 8 days. So I don't think there is any choice but to be decisive. I think they will be. And insofar as the slightly ambiguous statement that was made, or slightly cautious statement, if I might put it that way, I would just put it down to usual caution in not, making a very sweeping statement. I think they just need time to sleep over it, and maybe tomorrow or on Monday we might have more clarity. And I think to my mind, I think the government will act quickly, will act decisively, and hopefully broad-base this and come out with a circular, as Pranav just said.
All right, and Monday we'll have another debate as well. I'm sure we've got the story right. So we'll, of course, celebrate this big success there as well. AP Shah report only on ET Now. Pranav, Ketan, thank you so much for taking time out and joining us live.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.